Before we start, comment down where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let's begin. When I started working the overnight shift at Walmart, I thought the hardest part would be staying awake. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that some things you see after midnight aren't supposed to be seen at all. I've worked retail before, gas stations, warehouses, a few dead-end cashier gigs, but there's something about Walmart at 3 a.m. that feels different. The lights buzz louder, the air feels heavier, and the building seems aware. You don't notice it at first. You tell yourself it's just fatigue, the hum of the refrigerators, or maybe your brain trying to fill the silence. But after a few weeks, you start noticing the patterns. The same flickering light in aisle 9, the same squeaky cartwheel that echoes even when no one's around. The way the motion sensors trigger 5 seconds before you turn the corner. I was stocking home goods that night, mostly mirrors, frames, and wall decor. I didn't mind that section. It was quiet, no heavy lifting, and I could work with my earbuds in without anyone bothering me. Around 1 a.m., the rain outside had started to pick up hard enough that you could hear it through the roof. Like thousands of fingers tapping in rhythm, our night crew was small. Me, Mike the janitor, Sarah in grocery, and a supervisor named Carl who mostly sat in the back doing inventory. I just unboxed a shipment of decorative mirrors, cheap ones with fake wooden frames and that dusty plastic smell. I lined them up along the shelves in aisle 12, stacking the extras in the back. I remember glancing up and catching my reflection in one of them, pale under the fluorescent light, eyes ringed with exhaustion. But what made me stop was that my reflection wasn't quite right. It's hard to explain. My body was facing forward, but in the mirror I looked like I was slightly turned. My reflection's shoulder was angled away, like it was caught mid-turn while I stood still. I blinked, looked again, and it was fine. Just my imagination. I even laughed at myself. Too much caffeine, not enough sleep. A few minutes later, while restocking shelves, I noticed one of the mirrors had a sticker on the back. Old, yellowed, half-peeled. It read, "Property of store number 1A6, do not resell." Our store number was 3124. I called Carl over the radio. "Hey, Carl, you know anything about old stock being shipped from other stores?" Static, then his voice crackled through. "Negative. We only get redirected inventory if it's clearance. Why?" "Just found a few mirrors labeled from another store. Looks old." He paused. "Check the tags. If they don't scan, toss them in back. We'll deal with it later." So I scanned them. Nothing. The handheld reader beeped twice and went silent. The code didn't even register in the system. I figured whatever, old junk, maybe from a remodel. I placed the weird one near the end of the aisle and kept working. But every time I passed it, I felt this tiny pull in my gut, like the way you feel when someone's watching you, the kind of instinct that makes you turn around even though you know no one's there. By 2:45 a.m., the rain outside had turned into a full storm. Thunder rolled so loud it made the light fixtures shake. The store was dead silent except for the wind, howling against the doors and the occasional squeak of Mike's mop bucket echoing from somewhere near grocery. I was restocking a row of picture frames when something shifted behind me, a faint scraping sound, like glass sliding against metal. I turned around and froze. That same mirror, the one from store, Number 6, wasn't where I'd left it. It had moved about 5 feet closer to the middle of the aisle, leaning slightly forward like it was about to fall. "Mike," I called. No answer, just the distant hum of the freezers. I walked over, crouched, and adjusted it back against the shelf. I remember my reflection looking weird again, just a split-second delay, like an old video feed buffering. That's when I noticed something else. The frame wasn't solid wood, it was metal, and underneath the peeling finish, I saw faint etched numbers scratched into the edge. There's 0317. Time, a code? I didn't know. I shook it off, finished my aisle, and clocked out for break. The rain hadn't let up, and thunder kept rumbling like faraway explosions. Mike was in the break room, half asleep with his mop leaning against the wall. "You ever seen any old stock come in from other stores?" I asked him. He yawned. "They do that sometimes. Usually when a store closes. Why?" "Got some old mirrors labeled from Yonna 186. Mike frowned. "That one burned down, right?" I looked up. "What?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, pretty sure. About 5 years ago, electrical fire overnight. They never rebuilt it. I remember because a buddy of mine worked there. Said it started in home goods. I felt my stomach drop. Home goods? Yep, aisle 12, I think. He said it so casually, like it was just trivia, then went back to scrolling on his phone. But my hands had gone cold. When I got back to the floor, I noticed something off immediately. The intercom was crackling softly even though no one was using it. Then pop. The lights over aisle 12 flickered once, twice, and went out completely. The rest of the store stayed lit, just that one aisle in darkness. I should have called maintenance, but something about the silence pulled me in. The air felt thicker there, humid, like stepping into a fog. My flashlight beam cut through dust that shouldn't have been there. And at the far end of the aisle, that same mirror stood perfectly upright. Only now it wasn't reflecting me. It showed aisle 12, yes, but in the reflection the lights were still on. Everything looked brighter, cleaner. The shelves were full of merchandise that didn't even match our layout anymore. And behind the glass, I could just barely see someone moving, a figure pushing a cart, their Walmart vest glowing faintly under the fluorescent light. I froze. The reflection figure stopped too. Slowly it turned its head toward me. It was me, but not exactly. My face was pale, almost gray, eyes darker than they should be. And I was smiling, a slow, unnatural grin that didn't reach the eyes. Then the lights in the aisle flickered back on. The reflection vanished. Just me again. I stepped back, heart hammering. My radio buzzed suddenly, static. Then a garbled voice that didn't sound like Carl or Mike. Aisle 12. Get out. The words twisted through static. I dropped the radio, the sound echoing too loud in the silence. I didn't even think. I turned and bolted down the aisle, but halfway through, my foot slipped, something slick on the floor. When I looked down, I saw a small puddle forming beneath the mirror, clear cold water dripping down the frame. Except it wasn't raining inside. I backed away. The mirror's surface started to shimmer like rippling water. Then faintly I saw movement again, this time multiple shapes. 5, maybe 6 figures moving just beyond the glass, silhouettes distorted by the warped reflection. The water began pooling faster, spreading across the tiles. I could smell something, burnt plastic, faintly metallic like ozone after a lightning strike. That's when Carl's voice finally broke through my radio. Whoever's in aisle 12, step away from the stock, there's a short in the wiring. Don't touch anything metal. I wanted to yell back but couldn't move. The figures inside the mirror were closer now. One of them pressed a hand against the glass from the other side. The surface rippled outward, and for a second, I swear it bulged like the mirror was soft, pliable, trying to let something through. Then all at once, every bulb in the aisle burst. Glass rained down like tiny shards of ice. I threw my arms over my face, stumbled backward, and crashed into a display. When I opened my eyes, the mirror was gone. The spot where it had stood was empty, just a faint wet outline on the floor, shaped like a rectangle. Carl found me a few minutes later, pale and shaking. He kept asking what happened, but I couldn't explain. How do you tell someone the mirror moved on its own? They checked the cameras later that morning. I asked to see the footage. Carl hesitated, but eventually pulled it up. The feed showed me walking into aisle 12, looking at something off-screen, then sprinting backward as lights flickered. But there was no mirror, not a single one on that wall. Even the boxes I unpacked were gone from the system, like they'd never been scanned in at all. When I told Mike about it later, he just nodded slowly. Store number 186 caught fire because of the mirrors, he said quietly. They said some kind of chemical reaction from the coating caused sparks when the power surged, but he paused, glancing toward aisle 12. My buddy said it started inside the mirrors, like light trapped in the glass. I quit 2 weeks later. Couldn't handle nights anymore. Every sound, every reflection, every flicker felt wrong. But last week, curiosity got the better of me. I went back during the day, just as a customer. The aisle looked normal, bright, clean, freshly stocked. But when I got to the end, my heart stopped. There it was. The same mirror, same frame, same faint scratch along the bottom corner. But now the sticker was gone. Instead, someone had written on the back in permanent marker, "Do not face toward the doors." I didn't touch it, didn't even breathe near it. As I walked away, I glanced at my reflection one last time. It didn't move. It just stood there watching me leave. When you work nights long enough, the store starts to feel like its own world. You learn the rhythm of it, the hum of the freezers, the quiet squeak of a pallet jack, the faint click of the automatic doors even when no one's around. It becomes background noise, until one night something in that rhythm goes wrong. I've been an overnight manager at Walmart for 7 years now. Started as a stalker right after high school, worked my way up. The hours suck, but the peace is nice. No customers, no crowds, just me and the night crew, keeping the place alive while the rest of the world sleeps. We joke about how Walmart never really sleeps. Even when it's empty, it's awake. That might sound crazy, but when you've walked those aisles at 3 a.m. with only the buzz of the lights for company, you start to believe it too. It was a rainy Thursday night in February. I remember because the power had flickered twice already. The weather outside was nasty and the parking lot was shining with puddles. I had 3 associates on duty, Jamie in electronics, Victor doing produce, and Layla on stock rotation. Around 2 a.m., I was in the back office doing paperwork when the intercom suddenly crackled to life. A long hiss of static, then silence. At first I didn't think much of it. Happens all the time during storms. I reached up to toggle the PA switch, but before I touched it, a voice came through. Not clearly, just a faint whisper. A few words I couldn't make out. "You there?" It wasn't any of my team. I know their voices. This one was slower, male, rough like static mixed with breath. "Hello?" I said, pressing the talk button. "Who is this?" Nothing. Just the sound of rain against the roof. I shrugged it off. Figured it was interference. Sometimes we'd catch radio, chatter from truckers on the highway. 10 minutes later, it happened again. "Aisle 7. That's what it said. The voice was clearer this time, like it was coming from inside the store. I pressed the button again. "Who's in aisle 7? No response. The store was supposed to be empty except for my crew. I called over the radio. "Jamie, you near aisle 7? Static, then. "Nah, boss, I'm still in electronics." "Victor?" "I'm in produce. Why?" "Layla?" "Back room." "Why, what's up?" My stomach tightened. I just got something over the intercom. Someone said aisle 7. Jamie laughed. Maybe the ghosts are clocking in again. I wanted to laugh too, but something in the tone of that voice. It wasn't joking. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward aisle 7, housewares. The lights there flickered a little, nothing unusual. The shelves were fully stocked, everything in its place. But halfway down the aisle, I stopped cold. The intercom speaker above me, the one mounted near the ceiling, it was on. The red indicator light glowed faintly. That's impossible unless someone in the office pressed the mic button. I called Carl, our maintenance guy, on my cell. "Hey, do these old PA systems ever, activate by themselves?" He snorted. "No. You sure one of your team isn't messing with you?" "Positive." I'm looking right at the light. Then it's probably a wiring short. Rain can cause that. Just unplug the mic in the office. I went back to the office. The mic was sitting there on the counter, unplugged. That's when I started to feel that unease you can't quite shake, the kind that sits in your chest like cold air. I told myself it was nothing, grabbed a cup of coffee, and went back to checking paperwork. Then at exactly 3:07 a.m., the intercom came to life again. Only this time it didn't whisper. It spoke. "Manager." My blood froze. It said it slow, deliberate, my title, not my name, but the way it sounded, like someone dragging breath through static. "Who is this?" I snapped, pressing the talk button. The voice replied, "You're alone now." My eyes shot to the security monitors. All 3 of my employees were still working, moving through their sections. I wasn't alone. I picked up the phone to call Jamie. But before I could, the intercom clicked again. "Don't turn around." That's when I heard it. The sound of something shifting behind me. Like shoes on tile. I spun around instantly. Nothing. Just the open office door and the faint glow from the hallway. My hands were shaking. I pressed the mic button again and barked, "Cut it out, whoever you are." No response. Just static. Then through the static, a faint wet drip, like water hitting a floor. I left the office, heart pounding, and walked toward the sound. It was coming from the front entrance. The automatic doors were fogged with condensation, rain mist swirling outside under the parking lot lights. And there, right in the middle of the floor mat, was a small puddle. No one had come in. The doors hadn't opened. As I stared, another drop fell too, but from above. I looked up. Nothing but ceiling tiles. Then the intercom popped again, directly overhead. "Don't look up." I stumbled back. The speaker hissed loudly, like it was breathing. Then, from deep within the static, that same voice whispered, "You left me out there." Something inside me went cold. "Who?" I whispered. Who are you? But the intercom only repeated it slower this time. You left me out there. That's when I remembered. About 3 years ago, during a blizzard, one of our night associates went missing. His name was Aaron. He'd gone out to collect carts around 2 a.m. and never came back. They found his car 2 days later, engine dead, driver's seat empty. No sign of him. It had happened at this same store, and the words, "You left me out there," felt like ice sliding down my spine. I ran back to the office and yanked the intercom wire from the wall. The light stayed on. That shouldn't be possible. The red glow pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Then the intercom came alive again, loud enough to make me flinch. Outside. The word echoed through every speaker in the building. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the doors, though every instinct screamed not to. Rain battered the glass in sheets, and the parking lot beyond was empty, except for a single shopping cart near the far lamppost. The lights outside flickered, making everything flash in and out of darkness. I stepped forward. The doors hissed open. The rain hit me immediately, cold, heavy, relentless. My shoes splashed through puddles as I crossed the concrete, my flashlight beam trembling. The cart stood perfectly still despite the wind. There was something wedged in it, a folded piece of cardboard soaked through. I pulled it out and squinted. On the cardboard, written in black marker, were 3 words. "Check the tape." My chest tightened. I turned and sprinted back inside. In the security office, I rewound the footage from the last hour. Most of it was normal. Jamie moving stock, Victor rearranging fruit, Layla stacking boxes. But when the timestamp hit 3:07 a.m., the cameras glitched for exactly 3 seconds. Static, then a flicker of movement near the front doors. A man, standing just outside the glass. Head tilted, uniform soaked, face pale gray under the lights. He was wearing a Walmart vest, the old blue kind. And then the camera caught something that made my blood stop cold. He lifted his hand and pressed it against the glass. His mouth moved, forming words. When I slowed the footage down, I could read them clearly. "You left me out there." Then he vanished. No exit, no entry, just gone. The doors never opened. I showed the footage to corporate the next morning. They said it was a glitch. Corrupted video data. But when they replaced the intercom system a week later, the tech found something strange. The wiring behind the old unit was charred, blackened like it had burned from the inside. He asked me if the system had ever overheated. I told him no. He shrugged and kept working, but as he pulled the old mic console free, something small fell from the back. A name tag melted and cracked. I picked it up and wiped the soot away. The plastic was warped, but one word was still visible. Aaron. It's been a year since that night. Sometimes during storms, I still think I hear faint static over the PA. Once, around 3 a.m., the intercom clicked on by itself. The new one. Fully digital, brand new wiring. A whisper came through, almost drowned out by the rain. "Manager." I froze. Then it said softly, almost like a sigh, "Don't leave me out there again." The first thing you learn working overnight at Walmart is that the sound of rain can drive you crazy. When it rains, the roof hums like 1,000 tiny drums, and the water echoes through the aisles. The whole building feels alive. You hear drips in places where there are no leaks. You hear footsteps in empty sections. That night it had been raining for 6 straight hours. Heavy, relentless, like the world outside was dissolving. I was working maintenance, mostly floor cleaning and checking for leaks. The manager, Tony, was in the office half asleep with the cameras. The rest of the crew had clocked out early because of the storm warnings. That meant I was alone in a 24-hour Walmart at 2:30 in the morning. Half the lights were off to save power. Only the emergency fixtures glowed. Long, pale strips of flickering light that made the aisles feel longer than they really were. I was mopping near the seasonal section when I noticed it. A puddle. That wasn't strange on a night like this, but what caught my eye was where it was. In the middle of the main aisle, far from any entrance or roof vent. It wasn't a spill either. The puddle was perfect, circular, almost clean, like someone had poured bottled water onto the tiles. I touched it with the mop. Ice cold, and it had that faint smell. Not musty rainwater, but earthy like soil after a storm. I cleaned it up, but when I came back 20 minutes later, another puddle had formed in the exact same spot. That's when I decided to check the ceiling. There was nothing. No leak, no dripping tile, no condensation. I was about to shrug it off when I saw something at the end of the aisle. A man. He was standing still facing the shelves, wearing one of those yellow raincoats with the hood pulled up, the kind of thing fishermen wear. I thought maybe Tony had sent a cleaner from another shift, but when I called out, "Hey man, you good?" he didn't move. I took a few steps closer. "Store's closed, buddy." No response. When I reached the spot where he was standing, there was no one there, just another small puddle. The water was still rippling as if someone had just stepped out of it. I felt a chill creep up my neck. The automatic doors at the front were still locked. No motion detected. No alarms triggered. I grabbed my radio. "Tony, you up?" His voice crackled through. "Barely, what's up?" "You see anyone on camera and seasonal just now?" There was a pause. "Checking." "Nope, just you." I didn't say anything. I just stood there staring at the puddle. The intercom popped once like someone tapping the mic. Then it hissed faintly, static mixed with something else. It sounded like rain, but not the kind hitting the roof. It was closer, heavier, like someone was standing under a downpour inside the store. I turned in a slow circle, heart hammering. But the sound faded as suddenly as it came. Then the lights above aisle 12 flickered and went out. That's where the garden section starts. The area with all the hoses, buckets, and fake plants. I could see movement there. Just faint, like a shadow walking behind the shelves. I called out again, louder this time. "Tony, I think someone's in here." But before he could answer, I heard it. Dripping. Steady, rhythmic. Drip, drip, drip. Coming from aisle 12. I followed the sound, my shoes squeaking on wet tiles. The air felt colder there, heavy with moisture. Halfway down the aisle, I stopped. The shelves were empty except for a single object on the floor. A 5-gallon bucket. Inside, water was filling slowly, one drop at a time from nowhere. No leak above, no condensation. Just appearing. Then I saw the reflection in the water. A figure standing right behind me. I spun around, nothing. When I looked back down, the bucket was full, too full. The water inside wasn't clear anymore. It had turned a cloudy gray. And then I saw it. A handprint forming on the inside of the bucket wall, slowly pressing outward. That's when I bolted. I ran back to the office, slammed the door, and told Tony everything. He laughed at first, said maybe I'd been working too long without sleep. But when I told him about the bucket, he went to check the footage. There it was. You could clearly see me walking down the aisle. Then for exactly 9 seconds, the feed glitched, just like interference from a storm. When it came back, the bucket was full. And for half a second, one single frame, you could see someone behind me. A man in a yellow raincoat, face pale and dripping wet, standing so close it looked like he was whispering into my ear. Tony paused the footage and turned to me. "You said this guy didn't come in through the doors?" I nodded. He swallowed hard, rewound the tape. The cameras at the front entrance never showed anyone entering. No one. That's when he leaned forward, squinting at the timestamp. "Wait," he muttered. "What the hell?" He zoomed in. On the man's reflection in the split second before the glitch, you could see his Walmart badge. The logo was old, faded from before the 2008 redesign, and under the name line you could barely make out the word maintenance. Tony looked at me. "You said you started working here 5 years ago, right?" "Yeah." "Before that, you ever hear of a guy named Dennis?" The name didn't ring a bell. Tony sighed, rubbing his face. "About 10 years back, before the remodel, there was a night shift worker, maintenance guy. They found him dead behind the garden center." My throat went dry. "During a storm like this one," Tony continued, "he'd gone up to check a roof drain. Slipped, broke his neck. They said he'd been lying out there in the rain for hours before anyone found him. I just stared at him." Tony turned back to the screen. The image of that soaked figure lingered on pause, water dripping down his coat. "Guess he still likes to make his rounds," Tony said quietly. We tried to laugh it off, tried to focus on closing tasks, but the store felt heavier after that. The air damp, the lights dimmer. Around 4 a.m., the rain stopped. Complete silence. No wind, no thunder. That's when Tony got up to do his usual walkthrough. He told me to stay in the office and watch the cameras. 5 minutes later, I saw him on the monitor walking past aisle 12. Then the screen fuzzed. A figure appeared at the end of the aisle, standing perfectly still. Yellow raincoat. Tony froze when he saw it. He lifted his flashlight. The beam hit the figure's chest, and the coat was dripping wet. Water pooled beneath his feet. Then, without warning, every camera feed in the store glitched at once. When it came back, Tony was gone. I called his name over the radio, no response. I ran to aisle 12, my heart racing so fast it hurt. No Tony, just the bucket, still sitting in the middle of the floor, half full now, and something floating inside. Tony's ID badge. I remember backing away slowly, my legs shaking. Then the intercom popped, loud, sharp. A voice whispered through it, almost drowned in the faint patter of distant rain. "Clean up, aisle 12. That was the last thing I remember. Before I ran out of the store into the parking lot, the rain had started again, but soft this time, almost gentle. When I looked back at the glass doors, I saw him, standing inside, the rain collector, water dripping from his coat, head tilted, staring right at me. And then the lights inside went out one by one. They never found Tony. Police checked the footage, said it was too corrupted to use. They called it electrical interference. Corporate sealed off aisle 12 for renovation a week later. When they reopened it, the floor tiles had been replaced in all except one section, the one where the puddle always formed. Even now, years later, every time it rains hard enough, employees say they hear dripping there. And sometimes when the store's empty, the PA clicks on all by itself. A voice whispers the same 3 words. Calm, slow, wet. Clean up, aisle 12. It started with a price tag. Something so small you'd never think twice about it. But that's the thing about working nights. Little things become the loudest. I was doing inventory in the home goods section. Aisle 19 is when I noticed the first one. A plain white tag hanging off a set of towels. The barcode was smudged, but what caught my eye wasn't that. It was the price. Zero. I frowned. Thought maybe it was a misprint. I scanned it with the handheld device. No record found. So I peeled it off and replaced it with a new one from the stack. But when I turned around to keep working, the same tag was back, hanging off the same set of towels. At first, I laughed to myself. Maybe I grabbed the wrong barcode roll. I tore it off again, double-checked the label ID. Everything looked fine. Then I noticed another one. 2 aisles over. Same white tag. Same 0.0. By 1 a.m., I'd found 4 more. Each one in a different part of the store. Bedding, kitchen electronics, even toys. All of them had the same blank barcode and the same impossible price. 0. I told my manager, Diane, about it. She thought I was messing around. Probably some glitch in the printer, she said. Throw them out. So I did. I tossed them in the compactor bin. But the next night, they were back. This time there were dozens. Some stuck to shelves, others fluttering loose on the floor. A few were even hanging from items that didn't exist in our inventory, and a set of Black Ridge lanterns. A frosted mirror clock, a Delano figurine. I scanned one. The screen flashed white, then went black. When it rebooted, the display read, Item found, backroom storage 3. That didn't make sense. We didn't have a storage 3. I checked the store map. Nothing beyond the regular 2 receiving areas. Diane shrugged it off again, but I couldn't. Something about it was eating at me. So around 3 a.m., I went looking. I knew every inch of that building. But near the back of the warehouse, past the pallets and seasonal overflow, I found a narrow door half hidden behind a rack of old signage. No label, just gray metal with a rusted handle. I pulled it open. The smell hit first. Stale air, damp and old, like a basement that hadn't been touched in years. Inside was a small storage room, maybe 10 by 12 feet. Bare concrete walls, one flickering bulb overhead, and in the middle of the floor was a cart. A Walmart cart, old style, the kind with the blue plastic seat and squeaky wheels. It was filled with items, all tagged. Dozens of those same white price tags fluttering softly in the draft from the door. Every tag read 0.0. I picked one up. It was attached to a picture frame. Inside the frame wasn't a photo. It was a piece of yellowed paper. Written on it in faded black ink were 3 words. Do not sell. A chill crawled up my back. I grabbed my radio. Diane, you need to come back here. No response. Static. Then faintly, like someone whispering through the channel, and a voice said, Backroom storage 3. I dropped the radio. The bulb above me flickered. I could hear something moving deeper in the room behind the racks. I turned my flashlight that way and saw movement. A figure standing halfway in shadow, wearing an old Walmart vest. The logo was the sunflower design, one we hadn't used since the early 2000s. He wasn't facing me, just staring down at something in his hand. I took a careful step forward. "Hey, you're not supposed to be back here." No answer. The man slowly lifted what he was holding, a price tag. He turned his head slightly and I saw his face. Pale, water-stained, like paper left out in the rain, and where his eyes should have been. There were blank barcode lines. He lifted the tag higher and said, in a voice that was barely human, "0 means return." The light went out. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back in the office, breathing hard. Diane was there, startled by the noise. I tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. About the tags. The room, the man. She didn't believe me. Not until we checked the cameras. We rewound to the moment I opened that back room door. The feed glitched. Static streaks like water running down glass. And then she gasped. On the screen behind me, the old man in the blue vest stepped into view. He looked straight at the camera, barcode eyes glowing faintly white. Then the image distorted, horizontal lines pulling across the feed, and he was gone. We called maintenance. They checked the room later that morning. It was empty. No cart, no tags, just bare concrete and a single flickering bulb. They sealed it up after that, moved a pallet rack in front of it, pretended it didn't exist, but that wasn't the end. The next week, during inventory, we found another tag. This one was different. The price wasn't 0.4 anymore. It said 1997, and under it, printed in faint gray ink, were the words, "Return accepted." At first, I thought maybe it was just another glitch, until I saw what it was attached to. A picture frame, with a photo inside this time. It was Diane, standing in the back room, holding a tag. That was 2 days before she quit. She never said why, didn't leave a note, didn't pick up her last paycheck, just disappeared. We thought she'd transferred. But when HR tried to call her, her phone had been disconnected. 2 months later, we got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single price tag. White blank, except for one word. Returned. Sometimes when the scanners glitch or a tag won't read, the system flashes a strange code. Item found, storage 3. The new hires ask what it means. We tell them it's just an old system error, but those of us who've been here long enough, we know better. We've all seen that cart. We've all found those tags. And if you ever find one that says 0.0, don't scan it. Don't peel it off. Just leave it there, because 0 doesn't mean free. It means something wants to come back. Working nights at Walmart messes with your sense of time. After a while, the clock stops meaning much. You start thinking in routines instead. When the truck arrives, when the freezers hum, when the overhead lights dim just a little before dawn. I've been on night shift for 3 years now. It's quiet work. Peaceful even if you know how to tune out. The hum of the fluorescents and the squeak of the pallet jacks. But every once in a while, something happens that reminds you you're not supposed to be there after dark. This started on a Tuesday and always Tuesday for some reason. The night was slow, rain tapping against the skylight like fingers. We were running the usual overnight restock. I was assigned to the grocery section, aisle 3 through 7. Around 12:30 a.m., I noticed a new guy. He was tall, lean, wearing the same navy vest as the rest of us. I figured he was a transfer from another store. That happened sometimes. He had one of those old-style name badges, white with black lettering instead of the newer blue ones. It said Rick. He didn't talk much, just nodded and went about his work, slicing open boxes of canned soup and lining them up perfectly on the shelf. He was quiet, too quiet. No headphones, no humming, no idle chatter. Still, I was glad for the help. We were short-staffed, and he seemed to know exactly what to do. I didn't think much about it until later that night when I went to grab a soda from the break room. Diane, our shift lead, was there flipping through the clipboard. "Hey," I said, "who's the new guy?" "Rick, he's a machine out there." She looked up, frowning. "Rick who?" "The guy restocking soup. Tall brown hair, old badge." Diane flipped through the list again. "There's no Rick scheduled tonight." I laughed, thinking maybe she just hadn't updated the sheet. "You sure? He's literally out there right now." She shook her head. "We haven't had anyone named Rick on payroll since, I think since before I started. Maybe you misread the badge." I didn't push it. I figured she was tired. We all were. But when I went back out to aisle 4, Rick was gone. The boxes were neatly stacked. The soup cans all perfectly aligned, facing forward, labels straight. But the box cutter he'd been using was sitting open on the floor. And the tag from his vest, the one that said Rick, was lying right beside it. For the next few nights, I tried not to think about it. Weird stuff happens during the graveyard shift. Maybe some temp had borrowed an old vest. Maybe I was just overtired. But the following week, I saw him again. It was after 2 a.m. The store was dead silent, rain still falling outside. I was scanning inventory and electronics when I heard the sound of a pallet jack squeaking from the next aisle. When I turned the corner, there he was, Rick, stacking TV boxes. His hands moved with mechanical precision. No wasted motion, no breaks. The same vest, the same old white badge. "Hey man," I called out, half joking. "Guess you're back on the clock?" He stopped, turned his head just slightly. Not enough to look at me, just enough to let me know he heard. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. I frowned. "Pretty sure I am. Got 6 hours left on shift." He didn't answer. Just picked up the box cutter, slid open another carton, and kept working. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. I backed off, decided not to bother him. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something on the TV boxes. Each one had a small sticker that read, "Returned, approved." That wasn't our label. It wasn't even the right font. When I blinked, they were gone. The next morning, I asked Diane again if anyone had been restocking electronics. She swore no one had. I didn't tell her about what he said. About the stickers. 2 nights later, the cameras glitched. Our security feed runs on an old system. Grainy black and white monitors above the desk. Around 3 a.m., I was clocking out inventory numbers when the screen for aisle 12 started flickering. I leaned in. On the monitor, I could see a figure pushing a cart slowly down the aisle. The lighting was bad, but I recognized the outline. The vest. Rick. He stopped by a display of small appliances and started unloading boxes. I switched the feed to live view. The timestamp said 3:17 a.m., but aisle 12 was empty. I grabbed my radio. "Diane, check the monitors for aisle 12. Her voice crackled through. "Why?" "Just look." A moment later, she came back, voice tight. "There's no one there." But I was still staring at the screen. And on the feed, Rick had turned toward the camera. For a split second, the image distorted, and his face, it didn't look right. His eyes were dark pits, like the color had been sucked out. His mouth hung open slightly, lips pale and dry. Then the image froze, blurred, and the feed went black. We rebooted the system. It came back online, but the footage from that hour was gone. Wiped. After that, everyone started noticing weird things. Boxes stacked perfectly in aisles no one had worked. Inventory counts balancing themselves overnight. Even Diane admitted she found a clipboard, one morning with her signature scrawled across it, except she hadn't signed anything. Then one of the new hires, Kevin, came in pale as a ghost during break. He said he was pulling product from the back room around 4 a.m. when he saw someone stocking shelves. Ahead of him, some guy with an old badge, he said. Diane and I exchanged looks. "What did it say?" she asked. Kevin swallowed hard. "Rick, that night Diane and I decided to check the back storage room after close. We went down past the seasonal section, through the swinging metal doors. The air back there always felt a little heavier, warmer, stale, like it hadn't been circulated in years. There were old fixtures back there, rusted shelving, broken carts, boxes from product lines that hadn't existed in a decade. We found nothing out of place until we reached the far end. There was a rack of old uniforms, vests, hats, name badges, dust thick on everyone. And on the floor, half buried under plastic wrap, was a folded piece of paper. Diane picked it up. Her hand trembled as she read it aloud. Employee Incident Report, 2007. Name, Rick H. Position, Stock Associate. Incident, fatal accident, overnight shift. Crushed under fallen inventory in aisle 7. Resolution, area cleared, equipment replaced, employee removed from payroll. She exhaled sharply. Jesus, that's almost 20 years ago. We stood there for a moment, just listening to the hum of the overhead fans. Then we both heard it. A squeak. The sound of a pallet jack slowly rolling across the floor. It came from the next aisle over. Diane's flashlight beam trembled slightly as she aimed it toward the sound. There was a cart, and behind it, a man, moving boxes, lining them up neatly one by one. "Rick," I said, barely above a whisper. He turned his head slowly, in the harsh beam of the flashlight. His vest looked soaked, dark patches spreading across his chest and sleeves, like old stains that never washed out. His eyes were sunk deep into his face, pupils blown wide, skin grayish under the flickering light. He smiled. "You left this place a mess," he said softly. "Can't leave a shift unfinished." Diane grabbed my arm. "We need to go." We backed up slowly toward the door, but Rick kept moving closer, dragging the pallet jack behind him. The metal wheels scraped the concrete. He stopped just a few feet away, eyes fixed on me. "You weren't here that night," he said. "It wasn't your fault." Then he lifted one hand and I saw it, a jagged scar across his palm, pale and waxy. He held something out, a name badge. It was mine. Same font, same picture, except the name didn't say Evan. It said Rick. The lights went out. When I came to, I was in the break room. Diane was shaking me awake. She said I'd blacked out, that the power had flickered, and when she turned back, I was lying on the floor. There was no one else there. We checked the back room again at sunrise. No trace of the cart. No footprints, just dust. But something had changed. On the rack of old uniforms, one vest was missing. And my name badge, my real one, was gone from my vest pocket. I thought about quitting after that. I even typed up a resignation email. But I never sent it. You get used to weird things working nights. You tell yourself it's exhaustion, bad lighting, overactive imagination. Except the system started acting strange. Every time I clocked in, the screen would flash for a second. "Welcome back, Rick." It deletes itself after a second, back to normal. HR says it's a glitch. But sometimes when I walk down aisle 7, the one he died in, I hear that same faint squeak of a pallet jack. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of a shadow at the end of the aisle. Someone stacking boxes that disappear when I blink. And every now and then I find an old badge on a shelf. White plastic cracked at the corner, name half faded. When I flip it over, the back always says the same thing. Employee still active. I stopped asking questions after that. You can't reason with the night. You just get through your shift, count your boxes, keep your head down. But every time I swipe my card to clock in, I hesitate. Because I keep thinking about what Rick said. You weren't here that night. Maybe he wasn't talking about the past. Maybe he meant this one. And maybe one night soon when I scan in, the system won't correct itself. Maybe it'll leave it that way. "Welcome back, Rick." And when that happens, I think I'll finally finish the shift he started. I've worked overnights at Walmart for a little over 4 years now, mostly in frozen foods. It's quiet, predictable work. Unload pallets, rotate stock, keep the freezers organized. You learn to live with the cold. You learn to move fast with your gloves off, even when your fingers feel like they're made of stone. What you never really get used to, though, is how isolating it can feel in there. The door shuts, the hum of the compressors surrounds you, and suddenly it's like you're the only person left in the world. That's why the first time the freezer door locked itself, I thought it was just bad luck. Doors malfunction, hinges get worn, locks freeze. But the second time, and the third, and especially the fourth, I realized it wasn't the door. Someone was locking it, and worse, someone was doing it very quietly. That first night, it was raining heavily outside. We always get more deliveries when it rains for some reason. The pallets kept coming, and I kept hauling them into the back freezer. The air smelled like wet cardboard and cold plastic. The temperature hit me like it always did, sharp, biting, almost metallic. I propped the freezer door open with a plastic wedge, rolled my pallet jack inside, and started stacking bags of frozen vegetables. The hum of the fans was steady and loud enough that you couldn't hear much else. That's normal. What wasn't normal was the faint click I heard a couple minutes later. I turned. The freezer door had swung shut. The latch had fallen into place. Locked. If you've ever been inside one of those walk-ins, you know there's supposed to be a safety release on the inside, a handle you can pull to push the door open. Except ours didn't work. It had been broken for months, and despite multiple maintenance requests, corporate kept reviewing the repair budget, meaning if that outside latch locked, you were stuck. My breath fogged as I tried to pull the cracked plastic release handle. Nothing. My stomach tightened. I pushed on the door, then shoved it with my shoulder. It didn't budge. But then, another click. The latch lifted. The door swung open a couple inches. I stepped out fast, rubbing my arms as warm air hit me. I didn't hear anyone nearby. No footsteps. No carts. Nothing. I chalked it up to air pressure or the wedge slipping, even though I knew damn well that latch never just fell on its own. The second time was 2 nights later. This time the wedge didn't slip. Because I wasn't using one. I'd gone inside to rotate frozen dinners when I heard it again. That same quiet click. Locked. My stomach dropped harder this time. The compressors thrummed around me like a warning. I pulled the inside release, dead. Same as before. I stood there for a second in the cold, listening. Nothing. No one. Then slowly, that latch lifted again. The door cracked open. I went straight to my manager that night. His name was Lewis. A tired guy with dark circles under his eyes. The kind of man who drinks 3 coffees before midnight just to stay human. Someone's messing with the freezer door, I told him. He barely looked up from his clipboard. Probably a malfunction. It's happened twice. Then it's malfunctioning twice. I clenched my jaw. Lewis, the inside release has been broken for 3 months. If that door locks, then don't let it close. He shrugged like that was the end of it. Like it wasn't his problem. That was the moment I realized something important. If someone wanted to trap me in that freezer, no one here cared enough to stop them. The third time I caught a glimpse. It was around 2:30 a.m., the deadest part of the night. Most of the crew was on break or scattered across the store. I had just stepped into the freezer with a batch of frozen meat when I heard a shuffle near the door. Not the quiet click this time, an actual footstep. I spun around instinctively. The door slammed shut. Locked. My heart started hammering so loudly I could hear it over the fans. I ran to the tiny window and wiped the frost from the glass with my sleeve. Someone was walking away, a figure in a Walmart hoodie, hood up, head down, medium height. Quick steps. Never looked back. I smacked the window. Hey, hey! No reaction. I yanked the inside release. Still dead. I slammed my shoulder into the door hard enough to make the metal rattle. Nothing. Then, 10 seconds later, the latch lifted. But the footsteps were gone. I stepped out slowly this time, scanning the back room. It was empty, but the air felt wrong, like someone had just been there, breathing that space with me. I told Lewis again. He sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose, and said, "Maybe you saw your reflection." "Reflections don't wear Walmart hoodies," I snapped. He waved me off. "Dismissed." Again. After that, I started paying attention. I noticed a pattern. Every time the freezer door locked, it was between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. It was when I was alone, and it always happened when one specific person was on break. Michael. Quiet guy, night stalker, always kept to himself. Nothing outwardly suspicious except his timing. He'd been working here a few months and nobody knew much about him. He was the type who avoided eye contact, moved silently and never laughed at jokes. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. People can be weird. That doesn't make them dangerous. But then the 4th time happened, and that's when everything changed. It was pouring rain outside that night, the kind that drums against the backloading, doors and echoes through the receiving area. The store felt colder than usual. Everything felt colder. I had to go back into the freezer for a box of poultry mislabeled on a pallet. I didn't use the wedge this time. I was being extra cautious. I kept glancing back toward the door every few seconds as I worked. But that didn't help. The moment I bent down to lift the box, I heard quiet footsteps behind me. Fast, purposeful. Before I could even turn around, slam. The door shut with force. Then, lock. I rushed to the window. Someone was standing right there, facing me. Hood up. Not walking away this time. Standing still, watching me through the frost-speckled glass. The air inside the freezer felt colder than it ever had before. I could feel every breath burning my throat as my pulse pounded in my ears. I wiped the window with my sleeve. And for a split second, the face under the hood came into view. It wasn't Michael. It wasn't anyone on my shift. It was a man I'd never seen before. Maybe mid-30s. Unshaven, eyes wide and unfocused like he wasn't fully there. And he was smiling. A slow, dead smile like he was proud of himself. Then he walked away. Just turned his back and left me there. No hesitation, no pause. Just walked off into the back room like he belonged there. I slammed my fists against the door. "Hey, stop! Let me out!" Nothing. No footsteps returning. No voices calling out. Nobody coming. This time the latch didn't lift. He wasn't opening it. He wanted me in there. My breath fogged heavy in the freezing air. My hands went numb first, and then my face, my ears. I could feel panic rising like bile. I wasn't going to freeze to death in a Walmart freezer. Not like this. Not because of some stranger wandering the store. I checked my pockets. Nothing. No phone. No radio. I reached under a stack of, boxes where I kept a crowbar for prying open damaged pallets. My fingers were stiff, but I grabbed it. There was only one option now. I jammed the crowbar into the thin gap near the hinge and pushed with everything I had. The metal screeched. My shoulders screamed. My breath came out in ragged bursts. Then, crack, the seal broke. I shoved again. Harder, another crack. The door gave way an inch, then two, then it burst open. Warm air hit me like a slap. I staggered out, half frozen, gripping the crowbar with shaking hands. The back room was empty, but there were wet footprints on the concrete floor. Not from rain boots, bare feet. They led toward the storage aisles, then disappeared. When I reported it, everything went predictably wrong. Lewis didn't believe me. He said nobody could be in the store without passing him. He said maybe I imagined the face. Security checked the cameras. The entire feed from 2 to 3 a.m. was missing. System error, they said. Corporate shrugged. Nothing happened. Nobody investigated. But the next night, Lewis made an announcement before shift. Back freezer is closed until maintenance repairs the door. No one goes in. No apology. No explanation. Just a quiet rule to keep everyone alive. I still don't know who the man was. He wasn't an employee. He wasn't a customer. He wasn't anyone we ever recognized. Some say he was a homeless guy who snuck in. Some say he came in with the 18-wheelers during deliveries. Some say he slept somewhere in the store during the day. I don't know. But what I do know, what I can't forget, is the look on his face through that frosted window. He didn't look angry. He didn't look frantic. He didn't even look curious. He looked calm, like he'd done this before. Like trapping someone in a freezer was just another part of his evening. Sometimes, I still feel a rush of cold at the back of my neck when I walk past that freezer door. I can't help it. Some dangers in Walmart aren't supernatural. Some aren't myths or ghost stories. Some walk on 2 feet. Some smile through a window. Some wait for the right moment. And some know exactly how long it takes for a person to freeze. I've seen strange customers during my years on Walmart night shift. Drunks, sleepwalkers, tweakers, runaways, lost kids, angry husbands, and you name it. But none of them scared me the way he did. Not because he was violent. Not because he was loud. Not because he threatened anyone. He scared me because he was quiet. Because he blended in. Because he acted like the store was his home and all of us were intruding. And because for 3 whole nights, we couldn't figure out how he kept staying inside the store after closing. This is the story of the customer who never left. We close at 11 p.m. now, and the overnight crew clocks in around the same time. Most of the time, the last customers trickle out right as we walk in. The cleaning machines whir to life. The aisles grow silent. The hum of the freezers replaces the sound of shopping carts. Routine stuff. But one night around 1:30 a.m., I saw a man standing in the toy aisle. Just standing, hands at his sides, staring at a shelf of plush animals. He wasn't browsing. He wasn't comparing prices. He was stock still, like he was waiting for something. He didn't look homeless, didn't look dangerous, just looked wrong. I walked closer, pushing a cart stacked with boxes of overstock. "Hey man," I called out lightly. "Store's closed. You need help finding an exit?" He didn't turn around, didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge me. He stood there like he'd been turned off. I raised my voice a little. "Sir?" Nothing. Then, without turning his head, he said quietly, "I'm just looking." Not rude, not aggressive, just cold. I got a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Something about the way he said it, monotone, empty wire, made my skin crawl. I forced a chuckle. "All right, just letting you know the doors are locked. If you came in before closing, I can walk you out." Still facing the plush animals, he finally moved, but only his hand. He picked up a little gray wolf plush, held it close to his chest, and then whispered, "Not yet." That was when I noticed something else. He wasn't wearing Walmart colors or a vest, but his jeans were covered in dust. Dark stains at the hems. His shoes were worn out, almost torn open at the toes. And the plush toy wasn't the first thing he'd been holding. His other hand gripped something small. A key, I think. I backed away. Something about him felt unpredictable. I grabbed my radio. Lewis? You copy? Static. Then go ahead. There's a customer still in the store. Toy aisle. A sigh. Again? Again? I repeated. We've had someone hide in the store twice this week, he muttered. Probably him. Just walk him out. Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one standing 10 feet from a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I turned back. The man was gone. Not walking away. Not turning a corner. Just gone. The aisle was empty. And the plush wolf he'd been holding was on the floor. The second night, he was in hardware. Same clothes, same dust, same dead-eyed stare. This time he was sitting on the floor with his back against a shelf, knees drawn up like a child. A yellow flashlight lay beside him, one of ours, not his. He must have taken it from the display. I approached slowly. You can't sit here, I said gently. You're not supposed to be in here at all. The store's closed. No response. Sir, seriously, you gotta go. Still nothing. I took a step closer and he snapped his eyes up to me so fast I froze. His eyes were bloodshot, wide, focused in a way that didn't match the rest of his face. He wasn't confused. He wasn't sleepy. He was alert. Too alert. You locked them, he blurted. My stomach twisted. Locked what? His hands twitched. The doors. Well, yeah, that's what you do when the store closes. You shouldn't lock them. Why not? A long pause. Then he said in a voice just above a whisper, They know when the doors are locked. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but I knew the situation was slipping out of my comfort zone. Look, man, let me get a manager. No, he said sharply, eyes narrowing. No managers. No one else. Okay, I said calmly, hands raised. Okay, just tell me how you got in. He blinked slowly. His lips twitched into something like a smile. I never left. My stomach dropped. I took one step back, then another. He didn't follow. He didn't move at all. I radioed Lewis again. What does he look like, he asked. I explained. Gray hoodie, worn-out jeans, dust on everything, tired but alert. Lewis went quiet. Then he said, I'm coming. When Lewis and security showed up 10 minutes later, the man was gone again. This time the flashlight was still warm. He'd been there seconds before. The third night was the worst. We were already on edge. Security had done full sweeps. Lewis had checked every hiding spot, behind pallets, in the racks under registers, in the layaway area, even the garden center. Nothing. At around 2:15 a.m., I was zoning the cereal aisle when the lights flickered. They do that sometimes at night when the generators cycle. Usually it's nothing. But this time when the lights came back on, he was standing at the end of the aisle, head tilted, hands at his sides, staring straight at me. I don't know how he kept sneaking up like that. I don't know how he moved without sound. But there he was. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. You can't be here. He took one slow step down the aisle, then another. His shoes made no noise on the floor. I backed away. Look, man, please just stop. Let us call someone for you. A shelter, maybe? A friend? He kept walking. His breathing was slow, steady. Why did you close the doors, he asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was hurt, confused, like a child whose favorite toy was taken. We always close at 11, I said, trying to stay calm. You can't stay overnight. He blinked several times, then whispered, Where am I supposed to go? That sentence hit me in a way I didn't expect. He didn't sound threatening anymore. He sounded desperate, lost. But the way he stared at me, unblinking, intense, made every instinct in my body scream, don't get closer. I'll get someone who can help, I said softly. Okay, just stay right here. When I took out my radio, he moved for the first time with real urgency. No. His voice exploded down the aisle. I flinched. He sprinted forward, not at me but past me, brushing my shoulder as he ran. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a display of cereal boxes. He didn't even look at me. He ran like he knew exactly where he was going, straight toward the back rooms, and then he was gone. By the time Lewis and 2 security guards arrived, I was shaking. We searched everywhere. Nothing. No footprints. No hiding spot disturbed. No doors opened. It was like he'd melted into the store. We never saw him again after that night. But we found out how he was getting in. Not through the doors. Not through the loading dock. not through the emergency exits. He'd been climbing onto the roof after closing, breaking a small maintenance hatch, dropping down into the back overhead storage area, and waiting for the store to grow quiet, waiting for the crew to settle, waiting until he felt safe. We found a little nest up there, blankets taken from the bedding aisle, a half-eaten box of crackers, a flashlight, 4 empty water bottles, and tucked into the corner, barely visible, the same gray wolf plush from the toy section. Clean, new, protected from dust.
Like it meant something to him.
We sent the photos to the police. They ran a report. The man's name was Daniel, 33, no criminal record, no fixed address, reported missing by a sister months earlier. But the strangest part? He used to work at a different Walmart, a town over. He'd stopped showing up one day, just disappeared. They thought he quit. Nobody knew he'd chosen another Walmart to live in. I think about him sometimes. Not the way he scared me, not the way he watched me, not the way he moved through the aisles like a shadow. I think about the question he kept asking. Where am I supposed to go? There are dangers in Walmart that don't come from monsters or ghosts. Some dangers come from people who've been worn down by life until there's nothing left but a quiet hollow shell. People who slip through the cracks. People who find hiding places. People who just want somewhere that feels warm, lit, safe, even if it's a place they're not supposed to be. Even if it's a Walmart after midnight.